everyone. Today we're going to be talking about 6 different ways that you can supplement the curriculum you're currently using in the classroom with video. Just a brief introduction. My name's Caroline Farkas. I am the founder of Doodles and Digits. I was a classroom teacher and I taught elementary math for about a decade. And now I'm on the other side and I create videos for teachers to help support their needs in the classroom. Tasha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Tasha Shelton. I'm the partnerships and licensing lead here at Boclips. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I taught in secondary schools in the US. And I taught a variety, I taught for about 15 years, and I taught a variety of classes, mostly in career and technology education. So video production, photography, computer science, all that fun stuff. So
It'll be really exciting to have a different perspective from like the older grade levels.
yeah, primary education is not my, no.
So a few things which I'm sure you experienced in the classroom as well, kind of the challenge of preset curriculum. Every year in school, our district picked out a specific curriculum that we had to follow. So I was math, but English, pretty much every subject area had a different curriculum that they had to follow. While a lot of curricula is amazing and has a lot of great resources for teachers and gives them a really good kind of starting point and a roadmap of what they need to cover in a year, there are obviously some challenges with any curriculum that you get, even if it's the best curriculum you've ever seen. So some of the challenges that I saw as a teacher were that it was preset. It can be really rigid and inflexible. So you were supposed to get through so much content in such a short amount of time, or it just wasn't very like set for differentiation or helping support specific types of students. That's exactly my second point. It might not cater to diverse learning styles or student interests. So a lot of times they kind of do a one size fit all for curriculum, or they don't know your students. Like you had specific students in the classroom. No curriculum could know your individual needs of every single student in your class. And then sometimes I know for me as a teacher, it just kind of felt like disengaging or boring. It's really dry because I wasn't putting my personality in it. My students weren't putting their personality in it. So those are just some of the challenges that I personally had with a lot of preset curriculum.
Yeah, actually, I had the same issue. Because of the classes I taught, I didn't always have preset curriculum, but there was one class I did. It was computer science, and I felt like I felt boxed in. It was so hard. And it was great curriculum, but it was just I felt like I was a chef and I had a recipe, and it didn't know that I have some students with dietary restrictions or something. And so it's like, oh, but I can't do that, or I know they don't like this thing, so I need some other things to supplement. So yeah, it could be really challenging. Even like you said, with the best curriculum, it can be hard.
And I think too, like I know as a teacher, and a lot of teachers feel this way as well, that they are worried about sometimes using other resources because they've been told, hey, you have to use this. And I always like to think there's like the best of both worlds. Like you have to still use the curriculum, but there's a lot of ways that we can still put video in there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the power of video. I always like to talk about like why video. I'm really big into using research-based best practices as a teacher. That's really important. So you can say why you're doing what you're doing. So 3 ways that video has really been shown with research to help learning is number 1, engage students. I actually love this stat because research has showed that it increases engagement by 75%, which is so important because students are engaged outside of school in so many different ways with, I'm sure you've seen like all the video games and the things we're competing against. Like that is sometimes the hardest thing to do with students. The second is show real life application. As much as I would have wanted to take all my students on top of a landfill or behind the scenes of a chocolate factory or something like that, I know in my district, I think we sometimes got like 1 field trip a year. So it allows them to explore places that unfortunately we cannot go ourselves. And then the third way too, research has showed that it actually helps with retention, better retention with video. They actually on tests, they did like an A/B test of with video and without video, and they found much higher with video, which as a teacher, that was really exciting for me, specifically if we're reviewing for tests, state tests, things like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, the real life application was my bread and butter because I was teaching career and technology education, obviously. But getting back to doodles and digits though, that the videos that you have that show math in the real world, that's what drew me to your content. And I was like, and I think at the time when I found your channel, it had like 20 videos or something. But those were, I was like, well, this is it. Like that, because we know how powerful that is to draw those connections to the real world for students. So, and video does that so well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And some of the things that are like available to teachers now, I even think like, oh, I wish I would have had that when like I was a kid. Like I would have found these things so much more exciting. But
Yes.
it didn't have the ability. We had like the old school roll it in, on
Yes.
the cart, the big TV. Yes.
I would still have an age, I don't care about being old, but where, you would have the little slide deck thing and you had to press the button when it was reading or something. It was not engaging at all. So video would
Yeah.
have been incredible.
The monotone voice.
Yes.
Yes. So the big question of this webinar is like, how can we use the power of video to supplement what we already have to use? And we're going to actually go over 6 different ways to really support the curriculum you're using, but also make sure it's best for students. And it helps teachers out because teachers have so many things on their plate right now. They don't need anything else added on to be like, by the way, you also have to do this. This is really to help teachers to make things easier for them. So the number one way that I used video a lot in my classroom was I called it the hook. You hear it a lot in writing or even with like TV shows, or if you even, I know a lot of students right now are into like looking at content creators, like the big ones on YouTube. They even talk about the hook, like the first 30 seconds, you got to grab their attention or they're thinking about something else. So videos are a great way to kind of pique student interest and activate prior knowledge. A lot of times you can do a thought-provoking question. So in my classroom, that sometimes looked as like a math warm-up or a math puzzle or which one doesn't belong, where students can talk to each other and watch a video and get really engaged before we jumped into something a little more difficult. And exactly what we were just talking about, it can show a real-world example for any subject that you're in. I'm sure every teacher has heard, when am I ever going to use this? I feel like that is like the classic thing that every student asks. Get ahead of it. Say, this is how, we're going to use what you're learning today. And if students can see how they're going to actually have to apply that in the real world or in their life, they're going to want to pay attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just working on, for Boclips, we're doing social studies curriculum alignment. And so I was, I didn't have a full love for social studies until now, when I started doing the curriculum alignment. And I was like, oh, how can we get students drawn into something like how housing works for geography? And it was like, oh, that sounds like such a dry, boring, potentially boring subject. But I found a really great video from Great Big Story, and it talks about these islands in Peru and how their house is built on there. And so I could see, and they're short. That's what I like about hooks, is they can be really short videos that just get students talking. And I imagine, Caroline, with you, with these, it was always so fun to get the students talking, and just, you don't know where their brains are going to go. And so those are my favorite conversations, because you can inevitably, as a teacher, you're skilled enough to be able to weave it into what you're actually going to talk about. But it was always so fun to get them talking.
Oh
So.
yeah, and the connections that you don't like, you would never think of. I'm like, how did you go from this to here? But that's their background knowledge. That's the connection that they made.
Exactly. And it's meaningful to them. So it's like, okay, great. That worked. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And then I know, which is probably the case for you too, videos for hooks were really nice too, because usually at the beginning of each class or each period, you have to do all of the attendance. Like someone needs to use the restroom. Like you're wearing a million hats as a teacher. So if you're like, okay, here's a hook, the students are going to be like, yes, I can't wait to learn this. You can quickly like mark out that Bobby was absent and Mary, had to run to the restroom. It gives you a second to do what you need to do without chaos in the classroom as well.
Absolutely. Love it.
So the second big thing that I used video for was differentiation. Obviously in a classroom, if you have a classroom of, let's say, 30 students, you're going to have students at all different levels. And the nice thing is that video can not only help support students at different learning levels, it can also support students with different learning styles, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. There's literally like Boclips, you see, there's a video for everything, which is amazing. Um, and what I really liked, for example, so I was in elementary math, is let's say we were doing a lesson on adding fractions, but I had a couple students move in during the middle of the year and they hadn't even touched what a fraction is. It's really hard if you've got 30 kids and like 5 of them are on one skill, 10 of them are another skill. So video is so great because then I could just assign, hey, these 3 kids in a small group, let's watch this video on what a fraction is before we jump into trying to do operations with fractions. So it just gives teachers the tool to really pick and choose like what specific things their student needs. And that saved me so much stress when I was a teacher to find those specific videos to help reteach. And then we'll talk about this later as well, but even reteach parents, because I'm in math. So I learned math completely different than I'm teaching my students. So even my parents were like, I'm teaching it to them wrong, or they're getting mad at me at home because I'm using an algorithm and they're supposed to use a box. So just even different levels for like how comfortable parents are with the material as well. Some other ways, closed captions in multiple languages has been a game changer. Or even students that might be, not have their full vision, like just having the video and the captions and captions in different languages is so important. And then also, again, using videos to help review before moving on to a difficult concept. A lot of times as a teacher, I would use a hook, but then if we were talking about multiplying fractions, we would watch a video about adding fractions because they relate to each other, or just find ways to help reignite their background knowledge before moving on to a more difficult concept.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you highlighted the multiple languages, not just even for me, the way I use them, because I would have, students coming in from other places with different primary languages, and sometimes their English would be very low level where it was like, I can't, I could not communicate with them. So it's like, how am I going to teach computer science in English to a student who knows no English? And so
Yep.
I would absolutely grab a bunch of videos. Thank goodness there were so many videos that were in other languages that made it accessible for them, because then they were able to thrive, and they could turn on the English subtitles or English closed captioning so that they were able to still be gaining some language acquisition there while still watching videos in their primary language. So very powerful tool for sure.
Yes, I agree. So the third way I said we can use video in already another curriculum is the flipped classroom. And this one I've heard from other teachers is really powerful, especially for older students, which you can maybe speak to this more because you only have like 40, but you have a small like block of time. But basically what the flipped classroom is, for those who don't know, is you assign videos for students to watch at home for homework. So you're not having them complete crazy problems at home. You're just saying, hey, I need you to watch this one video over this concept. It might be a behind the scenes. It might be something to engage them. It might be some practice problems. And they watch that at home. So when they come to the classroom, you are there to actually help them through the complicated application, the activities. You can have the discussion about the video, and you're using your time in class for that active learning and deeper understanding instead of, the 10-minute video. Or I've even seen teachers assign like longer videos, 30 minutes, an hour, like, hey, go home, watch this. This will be great tomorrow. We'll talk about it. And I think that's so powerful.
That's exactly how I used it. I did use those longer videos. I taught middle school and high school, so obviously their attention spans were a bit longer. But yeah, so I taught, as I was saying before, I taught career and technology. So if, for example, I was in a video production class and I needed them to learn how to edit something, I might have a 30-minute tutorial video that shows them how to use different tools in Adobe Premiere Pro. If I were to, and I did used to try to teach that live in class, it would take days because they would interrupt because they had questions, obviously.
Yeah.
But if they even just got a preview of what we would do in the classroom the next day, then it made it so much faster. I was able to consolidate those what would have been 3 days of live teaching into one day of just, okay, you guys watch this video, we're going to do this. Let me know your questions as we go. But they already had a sense of what we were going to cover. So it was great. I loved a flipped classroom for that.
Yeah, and I think too, just even thinking about it from the student perspective, would you rather go home and your homework is watch a video and be able to actually like kind of absorb it and take some time to think about it, or go home and do like 10 pre-calc problems where you already don't understand it and everyone's in tears, and even if you watch a YouTube video, like you don't have a teacher there, the role of the teacher is so important that the flipped classroom kind of allows you not to waste a single minute of that important time. So number 4, review and reinforce. I kind of touched on this with differentiation, but just using videos as a way to review key concepts before assessments, provide video examples of problem solving strategies. So like, what would you do? Would you do it differently? Would you do it the same? And then offer those tutorials for challenging topics. I used video a lot, specifically with reviewing before we have big state tests here. I'm in Ohio. So every year, students, even in elementary school, have really big state tests, and they're tested on things that they had to learn from the August before. And it's always a joke. Every time we start doing like test review, I'll like bring something up. And you always have that one student that's like, we never learned that. And you're like, oh my gosh, we spent a month on this fraction or on this topic. So the best way, it's like you pull up a video and you say, hey, remember this? And you're like, oh, you were right. Yeah, I know how to do that. I remember. And you kind of activate that prior learning before they have to take these, a lot of times, high stake tests, where, you know, the information is going to determine certain things, which I'm sure is the same with high school tests as well, because there's like AP tests and things like that, where you have these really kind of stressful tests and teachers are trying to review everything. This is a great way to just put that into the curriculum.
Yep, love it.
All right, 5, this is one of my favorite ways, is tailoring to different interests. So the biggest way is you have your preset curriculum, and you can really tailor what students are going to enjoy through video to show real world applications, things that excite them, to empower students to kind of explore on their own. Every year, which I'm sure was probably the same for your students, like one year I had a group of students who were obsessed with slime. Like they wanted to make slime every day. It was like the slime craze. The next year was like the little like stringy bands. The year after that, it was like they were obsessed with sports. Every year I thought I could like, oh, use the same thing as I did the year before. I'd always have to tweak it as a teacher. So video kind of allows you to choose as a teacher, like, hey, this year my students are really into athletics and sports, so I'm going to do a video about, you know, math in athletics. Next year my students are obsessed with slime. Okay, so like, how can I find like a video that talks about like the math behind slime, or creating things like in the garden or things like that. It just, the world of video really allows teachers to like pick specifically what your students want like that week or that month, because it even changes throughout the year.
Yeah, definitely. I was just, again, going back to that social studies alignment that we were doing. It was on the topic of economics, and I'm watching the videos, and they're great videos, but I'm just like, okay, if I'm thinking like a student, how can I get them to be interested? And I happened to find a video that related supply and demand to the gaming industry. And I was like, okay, not all kids obviously are going to be into gaming, but they can, like you said, they can explore independently. And so they're able to find, if a student's into fashion, they can find economics of fashion or books, or there's so many different ins now, because videos are so everywhere and about everything. So, but it very much helps to give them an in on something that they love.
No, I agree. That's, yeah, gaming, that's like a huge thing. And it kind of goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier. Like these are things that I feel like you could never really explore behind the scenes before. And now that there's so much video content out there, the connections that teachers can make is amazing. Okay, number 6 is extending learning. And this is kind of along the same lines of differentiation, but it really helps students to dive deeper into certain topics. And we probably have all had a student or two that they get through the material and the curriculum, and then they just stare at you and they're like, okay, I did all of this. You even did all the supplemental stuff with the curriculum. You don't want them to move ahead by 2 months, because then they're just going to be even more bored. So what do? And a lot of success I had, I know other teachers have had as well, is to introduce different topics or depths of learning with video. So have them watch video of real life applications, have them watch videos of things that align to what you're learning, but help them kind of go in a different way or deeper, or independent exploration and curiosity. I remember I had a group of students who just were really into prime numbers. Like they just, there was a small group, but there was only like 5, but they wanted to learn more about prime numbers. And in 4th grade, there's like 1 page in our curriculum on prime numbers. So it's like I was scrambling, and thankfully there was like a bunch of different creators who had made wonderful, videos about like the history of prime numbers. Like what's the sieve of Aristophanes, where like you're like going through and finding prime numbers. What are the competitions? Apparently there's competitions to find like the largest prime number for cash prize. All things that we could find on video form, and they were obsessed. Like I gave them like 5 different videos, and they could find different things with prime numbers and use different tools. And obviously I had the majority of the class still working on, prime numbers and factor trees and the very basics. But then I had these 5 that were like really into prime numbers that year I could assign more things. And if I didn't have video, like there's no way I could have sat down with them and talked to them about like prime number competitions. They would have like, there'd be no way.
Yeah, you're one person. I had a similar sort of saying in my classroom that, I would have students in a similar situation where they would be done with something and I don't want them to go off and do whatever. And so I would say, I am one person, right? Like they can't constantly have me coming over, and I would love to just chat with them, but I just couldn't do that. And so I would be like, I am one resource for you. There are a host of resources to you. And I had older students, so I felt safe letting them navigate to places on the internet where they could find new videos. But yeah, I would, and talk about real world applications. If you can't get somebody to answer your question, go to another resource. And so they were able to find all kinds of stuff that they could learn, and then they could show me and they could show each other. And it was really, really a really cool way for them to stay engaged in the material, while also still learning something completely different. So all video.
Yes, which is so exciting. So I had just a few examples just from my library. Obviously, Boclips has literally videos for every imaginable topic. So for those of you, I mentioned in the beginning, I mainly do upper elementary math. So 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, or, ages 8 through 12 math. So these are just some examples of like how I would use different types of videos in my class to supplement a curriculum. So example 1 is I have a bunch of like brain teaser puzzles that are visual math puzzles, that I would use actually as a hook a lot of times in class. Students sometimes are shy in math class to talk about their learning, even like the ones that maybe didn't enjoy math before. It's really hard to get students to warm up sometimes. So I would put this up here, and it would just kind of change the whole feel of the class, because then, we would start the video and there's a timer in that one, but you can also pause it if they need more time. And students will be talking about, well, I think that the watermelon's this, or the ice cream cone's this, or I agree or disagree with you. It just kind of takes, when you put a bunch of numbers on the screen, it makes it a little bit more scary for some students. It just kind of takes the edge off, and it's a good hook, because people are like, why are we looking at watermelon? Like, what's going on with an ice cream cone? So that's just one way we use that. A lot of teachers also use these types of videos as what we were just talking about, an extension. You have a bunch of students that are finished with their work. They want to do some extra logic puzzles and ways to stretch their thinking. They'll say, hey, there's a whole library of these puzzles. Why don't you try to do 1 or 2 until the rest of the class finishes up? And they have the puzzle, they've got the timer, and it even goes over the answer so they can check their thinking. Example 2 is I have a whole introduction to decimals. So this is a great thing to introduce a topic, or this would also be wonderful before state testing or something like that, when people are like, you never taught us about decimals and you've had 6 months of decimals. You could show them a quick 5-minute video to jog their memory. Example 4, we have a whole video on arrays. A lot of teachers have been using this when they're going into bigger multiplication problems. So for example, you have students that were trying to do 3 times 248. You have someone in your class that doesn't even know how to do 3 times 4. So you might not have time as a teacher to go back to teach them, like, what is multiplication? What is an array? What are some visual tools that can help you solve these bigger problems? You could use that video as a review. Or if you're in 3rd grade and you're talking about multiplication facts, you could talk about what is multiplication. And then my last example there is we just had one of our latest real world examples. is math behind a food pantry. I know a lot of schools do, food drives or coat drives in the winter. And I was talking to our local food pantry and how can we connect it to curriculum? This would be a great way when you're learning math in class. There's, hey, we're doing, a food pantry drive right now, especially with all of the things in the US. There's a lot of need to help that, hey, how can we connect this to the preset curriculum where we can justify it, especially if someone's like walking in on an observation. You can say, hey, here's the standard. This is how it has to do with what we're learning. And it goes along with what we're doing as a school-wide food pantry. We're collecting food. Where does the food go? How does math have anything to do with it? It's giving them that behind the scenes rural world connection. I know when I was a classroom teacher, we often did food pantry drives, but we never got to see like where the food goes and how it's used. It's just like this mysterious pile of food in the front of the school that eventually, gets taken somewhere. So it kind of allows them to go on a virtual field trip. So those are just from my video library, but obviously Boclips has
Countless.
thousands. Like, I don't even know how many videos.
Yeah.
You have a ton of videos.
It's many, many. I don't even, it's so many. Yeah, there's something for everybody for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, like all the ways that you're using it, and obviously in other subject areas and for other audiences, there's so much. And I have such a love for what you're doing with the real world applications. I got chills just thinking about how are the students, yes, you might be teaching math or you might be teaching science, but there are so many other things that they can be connecting to that are outside of themselves and outside of what they're learning, but still connected to obviously what they're also supposed to be learning. So it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, Boclips has lots and lots. I was searching just for I was searching memes on Boclips because I was like, oh, how could, because I love a meme and so do students obviously, and there was one that connected memes to linguistics and just how we communicate using memes in a different way than has been used before. It was fascinating. So there's
Oh my gosh.
for sure. Yeah.
And I feel like that would even be perfect for like those students who do need to communicate something and they're like, oh, I hate writing essays or whatever. Like if you could just watch a video on memes and create memes and link that to, that's incredible.
It's so fun. Like it is a really effective way of communicating, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I do love a good meme. I feel like I send a lot of memes or GIFs.
Yes, all the GIFs. Apparently, though, we're old because the generation alphas aren't using GIFs anymore. And I'm like, you guys are missing out. They're so good.
I know. What do they use though if they don't use GIFs? I feel
I
like
don't know.
so much.
They just, I don't know. My daughter's 13 and I'm like, what are you doing on your phone? I don't know. I don't want to look. It's
Maybe
scary.
it'll come back around. It'll like cycle back around and GIFs will be like popular again when we're grandparents one day,
It has to because they're so good.
Like
To.
back in my day, we had those memes and GIFs and we'll pull up on our phones.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh. Tasha's going to take over the screen now to show you some of the awesome things that Boclips is doing, which I wish I had when I was in the classroom, because I think a lot of the problems that teachers are finding with other platforms, Boclips solves those with their new program. It's called Boclips Classroom, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Great. I will start. Okay, so this is what Boclips Classroom looks like. This is our platform that is specifically direct to teachers. And I wish I had this when I was a teacher because it would have been so helpful. But we have some featured playlists here, depending on the time of year. We might have, Halloween videos or Black History Month, for example. We might have different playlists for the time of year, but we also have lots of different featured videos. But I think the most powerful things are obviously you can search topics specifically if you're talking about DNA or any topic. You can just search and you can also filter by subjects, by grade level. I love that there's also a way for you to filter by channel. So for example, if you know that Doodles and Digits has exactly what you need, you can just come here and search for Doodles and Digits. I find that very helpful. We were talking about hooks and different types of videos earlier. We also have some filters here that could work really well for that. And then you were mentioning earlier about alignments, and we also have a set of different alignments. We're working on more, as I was saying earlier, we're working on the social studies alignment. But what's really nice is if you're teaching Common Core math or you're teaching math at all, you can come in here and go to, high school, and you can actually find I know this is a common course, so not everybody's using that, but you can find the actual standards and then find the videos that we have that align to those standards. So it saves a lot of time. I think it's really, really helpful, and you'll find a multitude of videos per standard, which is amazing. And we have, like I said, we have quite a few alignments at this point. But even if you're not using this specific curriculum, and maybe I'm wrong, and Caroline, you can correct me, because I didn't always have these standards for the classes I was teaching. But even if you're not teaching these specifically, you'll probably find something that aligns to what you're looking for. So yeah,
No, that's amazing. And I really wish I had that. And I think also just knowing that there's educators that are vetting all of these videos is so important, because on other platforms, you put in something that like the first 3 minutes looks like it's a really great video and it's safe for kids. And like, I know, like I have children, like I don't let them watch certain platforms because 3 minutes in, there's like a jump scare. There's something that like obviously shouldn't be in there. And I think it's great to know Boclips has like a real human being sitting down and watching all of the content and aligning it to standards and doing all of the hard work that teachers just don't have time to do right now.
Yeah, and it's all on Boclips class, and I appreciate you saying that, because yes, that's so valuable. And I think too with Boclips, the important thing is it doesn't have ads, because gosh knows what YouTube is going to serve up in terms of ads and the comments and things like that. You just don't, you don't want, like you said, teachers don't have time to go through and vet all of that. So to know that it's not even there and doesn't exist, and it's really easy for teachers on Boclips Classroom to share their videos so they can put them in their LMSs, whatever they need, whatever their needs are, or they can just, obviously they can share their screen and show students live in the classroom. So really, really cool platform.
That's amazing. Yeah, I wish I had that when I was a classroom teacher.
Incredible. I would have loved it.
Our last slide, that was pretty much what we had. I'll share my screen again, but if there's anyone watching this, any teacher that wants more information from Doodles and Digits, or we take video requests, I get requests all the time. For example, we have a math chicken on our show, and students will write into the math chicken and send it to our PO box. So the biggest request this summer was a vet, and I just recorded last week at a veterinarian. So I'm so excited for that episode. So if you or your students have requests on specific subjects or topics, or just want to talk about video, you can reach me at caroline@doodleslearning.com. Tasha, if teachers want to find out more about Boclips or the amazing videos that you guys have on your platform, who should they reach out to, or where should they go?
They can go to boclips.com/classroom, and then they can get in touch with us via some links there. So, and they can also see more about what we do. So it's awesome.